What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. We got another one here looking at Labour and its supporters, of course, following on from the election disaster which we all celebrated like Christmas had come early. Sarkar appeared on Sky News to discuss the Labour leadership and the calamitous election result. But being a die-hard Corbynister, this woman is so out of touch with reality, she blames everything but the Corbynated chicken. That even leads to an independent journalist mocking her for saying stupid things like going back to ideologies of the past and politics of the past is no way forward. Which, as you will all know, is extremely hypocritical considering the politics she subscribes to. Namely, Corbynism, rooted in the past and never going to see power. So let's check out our first clip from the interview earlier.
Interesting times for the Labour parties. The dust has settled a little bit. Ash, I'll come to you first. So many people asking over the weekend after that result on Friday, what went wrong? Have you managed to crystallise it this Monday afternoon?
Well, I think that if you look at the results, you can tell that a few things happened. One is that Jeremy Corbyn did not enjoy the same bounce that he did in 2017. And so those negative favourability ratings really dogged him throughout the campaign. The second thing is that Brexit, obviously, it split his electoral coalition. It meant that votes were being lost to the Liberals and the Greens in places which could have turned seats, for example, Chingford and Woodford Green. But then also in those, Northern and Midland seats, the fact that the Brexit Party was running against Labour candidates meant that Labour leavers either went to the Brexit Party or, because Labour had shifted their position towards a second referendum, didn't seem to be as committed to respecting the referendum result as they did in 2017. They lost a huge chunk of their votes there. And then the third thing is if you look at the breakdown of age groups and where they turned out, is that Labour absolutely dominated everyone aged 18 to 45. The Tories dominated from 45 upwards. And the problem with Labour's young vote is that it's solid, it is pretty much unchallenged, but young people tend to be concentrated around metropolitan areas, so you really get punished by the geographic spread. So Corbyn got 3% more of the vote share than Ed Miliband did, but overall 30 less seats than Ed Miliband did. So punishing.
So as I'm sure you know from that little clip there, this woman is completely delusional. Not once does she blame the Corbynated chicken, instead saying that he didn't get the bounce he got in 2017, like he was entitled to that bounce or something. No, people know what he's like now. One, they know he's a snake and a liar for the 2017 manifesto that said Labour would honour the referendum result, when as we all know, they've now moved on to a second referendum. She then talks about Brexit and it splitting the Leave vote, which is true, but did you notice she refused to admit that Labour voters had gone to the Tories? Because of course, this woman is stuck in denial, before then pointing out Labour's problem and something that they won't change because people like her and the other activists won't allow it. Labour is now the party of the young rich city dwellers with no brain for themselves that can be easily brainwashed with these crazy leftist policies that we saw in Labour's manifesto, and she has bought into wholeheartedly, because as you will see in a minute, she does not think there is anything wrong with Labour's policies. And if they have people like her campaigning for them in these Leave areas, they really are not going to get anywhere. She's a die-hard Remainer, and I expect so is 99% of their activist base. These London Remoaners are not going to be able to relate with a Northern Leave voter in the slightest. I mean, I bet 95% of them have never done a hard day's work in their life. So, how do they know how to talk to real people in the real world? They live in the London bubble, surrounded by their Twitter echo chamber and their safe spaces, as we all know. Now let's hear from the Independent's chief political commentator, as he will point out what she failed to.
OK, well, that's three reasons. I mean, does that strike with you, John? Is that the three reasons that you see behind Labour's crushing defeat last week? Worse since 1935.
Well, those are three of the top four reasons why Labour did very badly. But of course, the most important reason was that Jeremy Corbyn was extremely unpopular.
Now, that was only a very short clip, and most would think it's pointless, but it's really not. It just goes to show how bad the denial is among the momentum cultists like Ash here. This is an independent reporter, a well-known Remoaner, Labour-favouring newspaper. It's definitely not a Tory paper, that's for sure. And even he's not afraid to admit that it's actually Corbyn that caused it, as, of course, like he said, the main reason. We all know this and have known it for a long time. And if Ash is really looking for a reason why, she can take her pick. She only has to pick one terrorist organisation out of thin air and he likely would have supported it, and there is the reason why no one would vote for him. The main reason why Labour lost, and lost so badly, as the host said, it's not been seen since 1935. It's absolutely disgraceful. But that's what made it better. We've had 2 Christmases this year, like I said earlier, 12th of December and the one still to come on the 25th of December. Or maybe I could call it an early birthday present, as it was 12 days before my birthday. But let's move on to the next clip anyway.
Turned this manifesto into a compelling story the same way that there was in 2017. So I would be very cautious about throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying that what we need is a return to, centrist, neoliberal politics. If that were the case, then the Liberal Democrats would have returned far more than 11 MPs, and Change UK would have gotten more than, I think was somewhere between 0 and 1% of the vote.
John, that's interesting. Ash says it's not necessarily the policies that they got wrong, but perhaps how they said they were going to get there. Voters didn't buy in to the plan. They might have liked the idea of renationalising the railway, boosting the NHS, giving it lots of money, but they didn't quite believe the path to get to those points. They didn't believe in Labour's competency in getting there, perhaps.
No, rescuing the NHS and giving it lots of money was Boris Johnson's policy, whereas Labour's policy was to spend all sorts of money it didn't have on women whose pension ages had been raised, on nationalising BT and all the rest of it. I mean, those were not policies that were believed. And if Labour won the argument, then it can't afford to win many more arguments like that.
So in that clip there, she's under the delusional belief that the manifesto Labour have put forward, i.e. Corbynism, is a good idea and they should continue it on, stating that you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, you really should at the end of the day. A lot of people looked at that manifesto and thought, hold on a minute, how are you going to pay for this? Most people in this country are old enough to remember what Tony Blair's Labour did when they spent all the money, and of course Gordon Brown, leaving little notes saying, sorry, there's no money left, or something like that. I can't remember what exactly it said, but it wasn't good. It essentially said they'd bankrupt the country and you've got fuck all left to play with now that you're in office. Either Ash Sarkar doesn't remember that, I'm not sure how old she is, she might not remember that, or she's just purposefully ignoring it because it doesn't suit her agenda. Which is actually quite strange considering she despises Tony Blair and his politics, as you will hear in a minute. And as for her claim about the Lib Dems, the reason the Lib Dems tanked so hard is because they went to an out-and-out revoke policy. That is common knowledge. You are just trying to deflect away from Jeremy Corbyn here. Jo Swinson lost her seat because the SNP were doing well in Scotland, and, to be honest, she wasn't that well liked, clearly not even in her own constituency. Couple that along with the Lib Dems' undemocratic plans, and her gender equality nonsense that many women had real big issues with, because as I reported in a video, the Lib Dems had a £100,000 donation recently from a puberty blocking drug firm. My guess is her gender policy was based around those donations, because a couple had come over the last few years, totaling possibly 300,000 if I remember correctly, or more even. Either way, Jo Swinson's undemocratic Brexit policy and her gender equality policies ended up sinking her ship, and rightfully so. That was another one of the highlights of the election night, remember guys. But it's not often you will hear common sense from an independent editor, but it seems we have done today. I mean, I am really shocked that he points out Boris Johnson and the Tory policy was to save the NHS and spend lots of money on it, as where Labour planned to spend all sorts of money it didn't have on crazy policies that made absolutely no sense and didn't resonate with the voters. I do not often find myself agreeing with an independent editor or reporter for that matter, but in this case I have to. Though, this guy shouldn't be allowed on TV because he talks too much sense and he's going to help Labour out in the end. Before finishing up with the ultimate burn of if Labour won the argument, then they can't afford to win many more arguments like that. Of course referring to what many Labour MPs, activists and of course the Corbynated chicken himself has been saying about their batshit crazy manifesto.
It's interesting you use that word mainstream there. Ash, is that what Labour needs to get back to? A leader that's more centrist? Did Labour go too far left?
I mean, like I said, policies, including some of the more radical edge of the policies like the Green Industrial Revolution, when polled individually, were very, very popular. I doubt, for instance, that Owen Smith would have done much better in this general election than Jeremy Corbyn did, because he would have, if anything, hemorrhaged even more votes in those Labour Leave seats. Whoever the next leader of the Labour Party is, and I, for one, actually do really like Becky Long-Bailey, is they need to be able to bridge the gap between Labour's metropolitan centres, where lots of BAME working class people are, where much of their young vote is, and speak to those older voters, home-owning voters in deindustrialised towns. That is Labour's electoral coalition, and I think, weirdly, they should be looking to parties like the SNP who've managed to hold together similar electoral coalitions. Simply going back to the failed politics of yesterday, the discredited ideologies of the past, is no way to meet the challenges of the future.
And John, it's interesting,
well,
isn't it?
glad we're agreed on that.
Oh, there you go, 1 point of agreement in this debate. I like that.
So the host is trying her best to get Ash the dopey bint to try and see some sense and realise that Labour's policies and its hard left ideology are not going to resonate with the British voter. Ash, of course, can't see sense or doesn't want to. She is a Corbynista through and through, brainwashed possibly beyond any help. She actually claims that these policies were popular, and she talks about polls. Now, we all know what polls she's talking about. Twitter polls. On Twitter, the Labour policies that she supports are going to be very popular, but in amongst the real world, and especially up north with the working class, they are not going to be very popular. You go up to the working class and tell them you want to borrow £500 billion to spend on green energy, they're going to tell you to fuck off and say spend £500 billion on improving this area so that we can get better jobs and make our life better. That's what they're going to say. This idiot hasn't got a clue, and it's part of the reason why Labour are right in the shit now, because they listen to people like her and the rest of the Momentum activists. Young, well-off university graduates without a clue what the real world actually is, and goes to show how far the current Labour Party is from what it used to be many, many years ago. She finishes up claiming Labour should be like the SNP, which I don't know what she means by that. The SNP's vote is all up and down the place at every different election. They go up and down like a yo-yo. You don't want to follow their politics. But then she gets to the most cream point of the whole video, if you ask me, where she tries to claim going back to the politics and the policies of yesteryear are not the way forward. Is she actually for real? The irony of someone who follows socialism, an outdated ideology that has been tried over and over again and has failed miserably, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. It really goes to show how lost these Labour activists really are. And to think this woman works for a so-called media organisation. It's incredible. Which you could hear brought a nice little chuckle from the Independent guy. But it is something we have seen a lot of over the last few days. These leftists are always attacking each other now, because of course they can't lay the blame where it should be. They lay the blame everywhere else. Like I said, complete denial. This Novara media woman epitomises why Labour has lost and why it will continue to lose. She is so out of touch with reality, as I've said many times, it is absolutely incredible. And like I said, I do wonder if there is a way back for her. But on that note, I'm going to end the video there, guys. I just thought you would want to see what this delusional bint had to say. Now, obviously, I cut out most of the interview because a lot of it was garbage, and I didn't really need to cover it all. These couple of bits here were more than enough to show the stupidity of Labour and its supporters right now. But before I go, I do want to thank our PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, and YouTube members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell, and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I'll see you all in the next one.
This Parliament is a dead Parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. This Parliament is a disgrace. But they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.